العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So if you're here for the adult mentorship program, maybe I'll ask the sisters who are here for it, maybe just come to the middle of it, if it's okay, if you're here for it. Do you mind coming to the middle of the, over there, instead of, just a little bit, just so I can see you just a little bit, if you don't mind. And then the brothers, yeah, so less people over here, more people towards the middle of the section, inshallah. Just so I can see you and I don't miss you. All right, so this is the first week doing it Monday after Isha. I'm already regretting the time. I'm already regretting the timing of it. It's probably not the smartest choice I've made this year. And I've made a lot of bad choices this year. But this is probably one of the, not a good one. Again, the reason that we're trying to do this, I'm trying to figure out a time. Technically, we could still do it Tuesday after Maghrib. But then I'll be working 7 days a week at the masjid, so I'm not too enthusiastic about doing it Tuesday after Maghrib. But if today doesn't work and people don't show up, then I'll consider maybe just putting back on Tuesday and just pushing it until after Maghrib. Sheikh Ma'an shouldn't have his moved his Quran halaqa to after Isha anyways, so we should be okay. We'll see. We'll see how much we get today. All right, so we have only two more major topics that I need to explain to you. And then the first didactic piece of our program will be done. The way that this is put together is that there are stages of how we're going to do things. Didactically, means what I need to explain to you comes into three segments. There are the fundamentals, the basics, which is what we've been going through over the last number of months, basically. The first 7 to 8 topics, and then we have the second piece where I explain a little bit more, I go into a bit more detail of how Islam actually works, how it functions from a jurisprudence perspective and in terms of how Allah designed the religion as a whole. And then the last piece is where I talk about maybe some of the controversial topics that come up, like whatever questions people have when they start growing up in life and how to address some of these difficult topics. So we're still in the first segment where we're just talking about the fundamentals, things that aren't controversial, there are no disagreement about. These are the basics, what you need to know. As a Muslim, this should be crystal clear to you. You should be very, very comfortable with these topics. And if you're not, then that's why we're doing this. So we talk about them so that you become comfortable with them and they're clear to you and you've had these discussions, you know exactly what it means and there's clarity in your mind in terms of what they are. Once we finish this first segment of didactic, we'll move into a little bit more about the habit building and the skill set development and stuff like that. And that Brother Khalid will kind of bring in his pieces. But I have to get through these things first. Because as a mentor, if you're going to mentor anyone in your life, whether it's your children or maybe your family members or people who are younger than you, or you're running a halaqah, there are certain things that have to be very clear to you. You should be able to articulate swiftly and quickly and easily with very little struggle. And because as a mentor, you're not required to be giving you're not supposed to be giving fatwa. Like that's not your job. Like as a mentor, you're not trying to explain the intricacies of why this is halal and why that is haram. It's more of just making sure that you are communicating to the people in front of you the basic principles, the basic values of what it means to be a Muslim, and making sure that stays very clear. Because we can lose track of these things easily. What happens for every ideology, it doesn't matter whether it's religious or non-religious, is that whatever the ideology was built upon to begin with, the core principles and values, once the ideology becomes successful, people forget about those core stuff. And they get caught up with some of the shells, like some of the appearances and the stuff that don't really have value to them, and those core principles are forgotten. It's just they become self-evident, or they become taken for granted, and they're just kind of slushed aside. And over maybe a couple of centuries, they completely lose any essence or meaning, and they stop actually fulfilling the purpose that they existed for in the first place, which is what we have to revive. That's why we've talked about the fundamental principle of Iqra, and we've talked about activism versus indifference, and we've talked about stewardship, and we've talked about service, and we've talked about jihad, and we've talked about tawheed. And all these are core concepts in Islam. I mean, these aren't stuff that are tertiary, they're not secondary, they're not something you should learn later. This is what you should know right up front. This is what the Makki surahs talked about, and talked about a lot, and really did drill into the minds and hearts of the Sahaba, allowing them to become who they became within their lives and to spread this deen. So today we start at the sixth topic. I won't get through the whole thing, but I'll get through certain parts of it, inshallah. And we'll have a case at the end that we'll do, and then we'll adjourn. There is a possibility that we change the timing for next week, so just stay tuned. We'll see. I'll do istikhara and see how lazy I am if I want to move this to a Tuesday and lose the Tuesday evenings. But we'll see. So self-purification or self-development, the word for it in the Quran is Tazkiyah. This is a huge word. This is a word that is repeated in the Quran many, many times. It's brought up time and time again. It's explained a lot. It exists in some of the most crucial verses in the Quran and most important surahs. And today what I want to do is I want to just make sure that you appreciate the importance of this concept, and then we take some time to wonder why is it that we don't really, why is it that we're not a part of this, and why isn't this not a part of our lives in a much more meaningful manner. So what is the purpose of prophets or messengers? Meaning when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends prophets and messengers, there must be a goal, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does nothing aimlessly or just for the fun of it. Anything that is done that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees or sends, there's going to be a very clear purpose for it. So why did he send the prophets? Now, you probably have already a couple of reasons in your mind to guide people, to teach people, and you're correct. But to be more specific, the Quran answers this question 3 times. 3 times in 3 separate verses very clearly, leaving really no room for or need for me to interpret or for you and I to give the answer and say, well, this is why. No. He explained exactly why he sent prophets and messengers, and he made it very clear. So these are the 3 times in the Quran that it's in Surah Al-Baqarah, Al-Imran, and Al-Jumu'ah. And it's in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, and I find it being interesting that it's in Surah Al-Jumu'ah because we're supposed to recite this surah every Thursday night in Isha. So it's something we're supposed to listen to. And it's in the surah that's called Friday, which is basically referring to the Friday prayer, one way or the other. And it's explaining what the reason. هُوَ الَّذِي بَعَثَ فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ. He's the one who sent amongst those who were ignorant, who did not have knowledge, did not have heritage, did not have a book, did not have guidance, a messenger amongst them, to do 4 things. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. In Surah Al-Baqarah, when Ibrahim was making dua as he was building the Kaaba, he said, رَبَّنَا, oh my Lord, ابْعَثْ وَبَعَثْ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ, and send amongst the people who will live in this land, where he was rebuilding the Kaaba in Mecca. رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِكَ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. Again, the same form, but a different sequence this time. Ibrahim had asked for these things in a different sequence. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded, but he fixed the sequence. لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ بَعَثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ. Indeed, Allah has declared his bounty upon the believers as he sent amongst them a messenger from them, minhum, meaning from their own people, from their own kind. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِم. So yuzakkihim in red was put as a second reason twice. And in Ibrahim alayhi salam's dua, it was at the end. As if Ibrahim alayhi salam maybe in his dua saw it to be maybe not the most important. He knew what the 4 reasons were for messengers, but his sequence was, yuzakkihim comes later. So twice in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would take that one and put it up right at number 2. All right, here are the 4 reasons. Sorry. Here's the translation for these 4 things that we just recited. So, يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ, recite the signs of God, or explain theology. So, يَتْلُو is to recite. عَلَيْهِمْ, upon them, آيَاتِهِ, his signs, not his verses, not the verses of the Quran. There's a common misunderstanding and misinterpretation. آيَاتِهِ here does not mean the verses of the Quran. آيَاتِهِ means his signs. So يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ, recite upon them his signs, meaning telling them who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Explain theology to them. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, you purify them. Teach them how to self-purify. Teach them that there's an actual struggle that exists right within them, which is the biggest struggle that they will ever stand up against, and is the struggle that if you win, then you will continue to be successful in every other struggle in your life, and if you fail with it, then every other struggle you will fail in a much more swift manner. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ, and teaches them the book, meaning teaches the rulings and the commands of God. What is it that he wants you to do? The halal and the haram, the wajib and the makruh. And teach وَالْحِكْمَةِ, and teach them the wisdom, meaning the proper application of the practices of Allah. Because not every fard, not every obligatory action is going to be practiced at every moment. There's the right place and time for everything. So if you know what is halal and haram, but you don't know when and how to do things, then you can mess things up too. So you may know what's right and wrong, but you just don't know how and when and in what manner you're going to actually apply these rules or apply these commands. So you end up making a mess of them as well. So you need to have the wisdom to know how and when. So basically, let's break this down and make it a bit more simple for you. So here are the 4 things. Who Allah is, What's the point of all of the deen if you don't know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is there any point of it? Like, what is what is the goal of talking about anything if the person doesn't know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Now, most of you being here in the masjid, the fact that you're here, means that you most likely, to one degree or the other, know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to a certain degree. Maybe not as well as we all should, but to a certain degree, or else you wouldn't be here. Most people who don't know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all, or don't care about it, it's not a part of who they are, then they usually don't come here on a Monday night. Usually they're somewhere else, or any other night for that matter. So the first one is who Allah is. That is what they call in, is it going to keep on working? This is what's called aqeedah, right? They call that theology. The study of belief, creed. What is it you believe in? What you believe in? Everyone believes in something. I love it now that the people say, I don't believe in anything. No, you believe in something. There's no such thing, I don't believe in anything. Not believing in anything has a definition to it. That means that you explain. What do you have to have some explanation. You can't say, no, I don't have any explanation. No. So refusing to look into the matter to come up with an explanation is a way of life, is your creed. My creed is that it's complicated and I don't want to look into it. That's your belief. That's your religion. That's what you've chose. It's impossible for you not to have a religion. Those who run away from religion, they only run away from one religion to the other. So it's something different. It's impossible. It's like you have to stand for something. You have to believe in something. You have to have some explanation for what's going on. Like, why are you here? There has to be some explanation. Whatever that explanation is, that's your religion. Whatever it is. Even those who are agnostic and say, I don't know. That's your explanation. And your explanation of things is that you are confused and you're not willing to commit to anything and you're going to let it go and just neglect it. That is a commitment. You've committed to not pursuing this any further. That's a religion. That's a way of thought. So aqeedah, which is the creed, the theology, that's the first thing, knowing who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Number two, self-purification, the tazkiyah, which is what we're going to talk about. This is the second thing. So if I came to you and I said, do you know Allah? You're like, yes, I know Allah. You know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is? Yep, I know Allah. Then this is your next go-to. This is your next step. This is what the Prophet ﷺ came to do. He came to teach you who God was. You know who He is now? Yes, I know who He is. All right, let's move on to number two. Tazkiyah. Have you done that? How much of your time have you spent doing tazkiyah in your life? Up till this moment, how much time have you spent being taught the intricacies, the methods of self-purification? And if you don't have an answer, then now you understand why I'm talking about this topic. There's something missing here. Because وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ, which is Islamic law, which is fiqh, you probably learn a little bit of fiqh. The fact that you know how to stand up and pray means you have enough fiqh to do it, because fiqh is basically how to do stuff. Like, what is it? Do I have to pray Isha? Yes, I do. That's fiqh. How do I do it? How many rak'ah? 4. I have to stand like this. That's fiqh. So you have some fiqh in you because you know how to pray your prayers, and you can fast Ramadan, and you give zakah, and you perform hajj, and certain things you know how to do. Then you have fiqh. And how to practice the law properly, which is suluk. You have a certain degree of behaviors. You understand the ethics. You understand how to do. You understand the compassion, the empathy, the kindness, the tenderness. You understand these things. But what about number 2? What about the second one? وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. Probably one of the most neglected aspects of Islamic thought that we have today. And I know this because I grew up in different parts of the world, and I was educated by different types of teachers, different scholars from different backgrounds. I worked with them, and then you find that they focus on different things, and you can easily go through a full Islamic degree. Like, you can go through like 25 years of Islamic knowledge, and very few people will talk to you. They'll tell you about them. They'll tell you the idea. You should be sincere. They'll tell you should be sincere. Okay. Care to elaborate a little bit on how to achieve that? I haven't been able to do it for the last 15 years. I doubt that I'll figure it out the last couple of years here. Do I have anything to add? There are methodologies for this stuff. How it needs to be done is something that needs to be explained. This how to do things. It's not just enough to be told to do it. If you tell your child to do something 15 times and you don't do it, 90% of the time they just don't know how. They're just not comfortable in how doing it, right? As you grow up and you'll have your own children, you have a mentee or a student, and you tell them to do something, they don't do it, 90% of the time, they're not doing it because they just don't know how. Like, the method isn't there. A child who won't read probably doesn't really know how to do it very well. Probably if you sat with them and, okay, let's see how you read, you'll find out, wow, they don't know how to read very well. That's why they don't do it. So it's really not they don't want to, it's that they don't know how to. If they knew how, they would do it. If you know how to do something, you're very likely to do it. If you're good at it, to any degree, like to any degree of perfection, proficiency in anything, you're very likely to do something that you're good at, that you know how to do. And what you don't know how to do, you're very likely to stay away from. You'll see that as you grow up, especially when you get into university and then become a professional. You'll stay away from disciplines and aspects of your job that you're not good at. You'll find yourself just taking, other people will speak up on something and just kind of walk away. I don't understand. I'm not good at epidemiology. I don't really know how to break it. Whenever they start talking numbers, I just kind of walk away slowly, pull myself out of the discussion. I don't know. I don't understand. All these numbers are very confusing to me. So when I'm told, can you crunch these numbers? And I say yes. It usually takes me like 15 months to do it. Not because I don't want to do it, because I don't know how. But a lot of us don't really admit that we're not good at doing something. So why is it this not done? It's just because we don't know how to do it. It's the main problem. We all know this surah, right? It's short. Ever thought of this surah before? Technically, the first piece of information in the surah starts right here. Everything before is not really information. It's just a sequence of oaths. You know what an oath is? When you swear by something, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in these verses, if you take a moment and you go through these oaths, He swears by everything He created known to humans. Everything that you know, Shams. He swears by the sun, وَضُحَاهَا, and the light and the heat that brings life to us. وَالْقَمَرَ, and by the moon. وَالنَّهَارَ, and by the day. And the night, وَاللَّيْلِ, and by the sama, the cosmos. وَمَا بَنَاهَا, and everything that went into creating them, in the matter that made it. وَالْأَرْض, and the earth. وَمَا طَحَاهَا, and everything that went into making what it is. That's everything. He just swore by everything that we know. By everything that you don't control, by the way. Right? Those things you have no control over. I don't have any authority over any of these things whatsoever. Not the shams, not the qamar, not the nahar, not the layl, not the sama, not what goes into it, making it, like the matter of it, not the ard, not what وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا. And then he swears by the nafs, by the soul, وَمَا سَوَّاهَا, and everything that went into making that, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا, and it was guided or is shown the fujur, meaning it going in the wrong way, with taqwaha, and actually being pious, only to build up to this one verse. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. He swore by everything. It's a very interesting surah, because there's no example like it in the Quran. That's why we have to take a moment. Like the largest number of oaths in a row is 4, outside of this. 4 oaths in a row. وَالنَّازِعَاتِ وَالنَّاشِطَاتِ وَالسَّابِحَاتِ فَالسَّابِقَاتِ فَالْمُدَبِّرَاتِ. You can say there was 5. There are actually 4, but you can say there are 5. That's the highest number. 11 oaths in a row. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't even need to take an oath, honestly. Like, does He? Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala need to take all these oaths to explain something? No. Whatever He says subhanahu wa ta'ala is the truth, and we accept it. But here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes 11 oaths. If I came to you and I said, like Muhammad, uqsim billahi al-azim, wallahi al-azim, and I go home, you're standing there waiting. You'll stand there maybe for a couple of days waiting. What's next? What you're waiting for in Arabic is called jawab al-qasam. You're waiting for the meat of the oath. What is the oath about? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I swear to you by Shams, I swear to you by its light and the warmth that it brings you. I swear to you by the moon, and by the day, and by the night, and by the cosmos, and all the matter in it, and the earth, and everything that went into it, and to your soul, and by your soul, and everything that went into creating it. What? قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Those of you who purify themselves will be successful. وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. And those who don't purify themselves will be disappointed. I love, actually, this word here is really cool. Khab. You'll be disappointed. Meaning, in your life, you're going to be disappointed. You don't take care of yourself, you'll be disappointed. When? Yawm al-Qiyamah. Be very disappointed Yawm al-Qiyamah. Why? Because you're going to come thinking that you're going to get all this reward for all the good deeds, but because you didn't self-purify, all of your deeds are flawed, like fundamentally flawed. They're filled with ostentation and envy and arrogance and vanity and lack of, and laziness and indifference, and none of them are accepted. And you'll be disappointed. You'll come thinking that things worked out, but they didn't. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Those who purify are going to be successful, and those who don't are going to be really disappointed Yawm al-Qiyamah. And it's scary because that feeling of disappointment is, like, there's 2 types of people, right, on the Day of Judgment. There are people who come knowing exactly what they did. They know what they did. It's not a surprise when they see the hellfire. They don't like it, but it's not a surprise. Like, I know what I did. I never backed out. I stuck to it. Iblis, he knows what he did. He challenged God, refused to step down. He was given his choice, given an opportunity, step down. Obey and listen and submit. He said, nope, not doing it. Jahannam, yeah, that's fine. I'll deal with it when it comes. So he's not surprised, Yawm al-Qiyamah. He's good with it. Obviously, it's a horrific thing to do, but he's not surprised. There are people coming Yawm al-Qiyamah, they're disappointed. Like, what? No, I was supposed to be on this side here, but why am I here? And then and the reason being is that khaba man dassaha. You didn't do what you needed to do. Now, we can go and actually explain, the rest of the surah is very interesting, but I'll leave that. You can go on YouTube and listen to my explanation of Surah Al-Shams, and you can go through, because I explain why the story of Salih and Thamud is there specifically. It's a very interesting surah altogether. Here's some hadith the Prophet ﷺ explains this concept a little bit clearer. And this is in the Quran. Now I hope I've at least achieved with you that Quranically, this is a big deal. 3 times he explains exactly why he sent prophets. All 3 times where he yuzakkihim. Here, this surah, he made 11 oaths in a row. 11 oaths, not 1, not 2, 11 times. He swore by everything that you will be successful if you purify and you'll be disappointed if you don't. I think pretty much closing ending the issue. Now, is that the only times where tazkiyah is in the Quran? No. It's all through the Quran, but I just gave you enough for you to kind of feel comfortable. This is a big deal, and it's something worth your attention. What he says, alayhi salatu wasalam, the hadith Imam Muslim, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَنظُرُ إِلَى صُوَرِكُمْ وَلَا إِلَى أَجْسَادِكُمْ وَلَكِنْ يَنظُرُ إِلَى قُلُوبِكُمْ وَأَعْمَالِكُمْ. Allah does not look at your appearances and your bodies and your pictures. Like He's not looking at this. He's looking at your hearts and your deeds. What He's looking at, subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's looking right at the heart. What are you feeling? What are you thinking? What are you intending? How are you processing information? What are you hoping to do? That's what He's looking at, subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's going on in there? On the outside, doesn't matter. This is for people, right? I don't do a very good job of it, but in general, people do it. But whatever you have out there is just for people to see. It's it's how you present yourself to others. And that's what you're going by. To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't matter. You have to follow I have to follow a certain dress code. I have to dress in a certain way. So do you. We all have to do it. But what He's really looking at, He's looking at the heart and the deeds. That's what He's focusing on, subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the hadith, Hatim radiallahu anhu would say, رَأَيْتُ النَّاسِ يَرْجِعُونَ إِلَى الْمَالِ وَالْحَسَبِ وَالشَّرَفِ وَلَيْسَتْ بِشَيْءٍ فنظرت إلى قوله تعالى إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم فعملت في التقوى لأكون عنده كريما. He's saying, I see people always going back when they give themselves value. They go back to wealth, they go back to lineage, they go back to heritage, they go back to family name, they go back to social status, they go back to one of those things to give themselves value. But then I saw that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. The best of you, or the ones who are ranked the highest in the world, are the ones who have the most taqwa. The ones who have the most piety in their hearts. So I worked on taqwa so that I can be of high regard, of high degree with Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because in this world, how much taqwa I have doesn't matter to you. You don't care about it. You don't even know about it. You have no way to actually assess how much taqwa I have, just like I have no way to assess how much taqwa you have. So I'm not going to get any points in your book regarding how much taqwa I have, but I will get points based on my academic degrees, my professional status, how much money I have, etc., etc., etc. I build points in your book and I give myself status in your eyes. But if I care about having status in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's taqwa. It's taqwa. He says, alayhi salatu wasalam, أَلَا وَإِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ مُضْغَةً إِذَا صَلَحَتْ أو صَلُحَتْ صَلُحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ وَإِذَا فَسَدَتْ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. Indeed, within the body there's a small little piece, little muscle. If it's purified, if it works, if it's doing its job, then the whole body functions well. And if it's not, if it's corrupt, then the whole body is corrupt. It's the heart. And that works both biologically and spiritually. Both biologically and spiritually. What's the number 1 killer in the world? Cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease. Till this day, because we eat Wendy's and McDonald's and we deep fry everything. So we're going to die of heart attacks. Statistically, 75% of us here will die of a heart attack.
That's actually why, because of deep fried stuff?
Amongst other things. Amongst other things. But just like biologically, it's the heart that kind of ends it all. Spiritually, which he's explaining here, alayhi salatu as well, it's the same thing. That heart. And you're like, well, what does he mean by the heart? Go ahead. Sorry? Oh, yeah, exactly. Dr. Khan is not here to tell us and correct all of my numbers that I'm giving that are probably wrong. But anyways, I'm close enough that the majority of people die. Actually, between me and Dr. Khan, we basically work on the 2 diseases that kill the majority of human beings. Between heart attacks and cancer, that's kind of everything that we have. But we can at least deal with this one. I'm not sure there's much to do about cancer, but we can do something about this one for sure. All right. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Because maybe up till now you you're like, yeah, Tazkiyah is a big deal. It seems like it will be disappointing Yawm al-Qiyamah. But here's the problem. He says, alayhi salatu wasalam, رُبَّ صَائِمٍ لَيْسَ لَهُ مِنْ صِيَامِهِ إِلَّا الْجُوعِ وَرُبَّ قَائِمٍ لَيْسَ لَهُ مِنْ قِيَامِهِ إِلَّا السَّهَرِ. He says, alayhi salatu wasalam, there are people who are fasting. All they got out of their fasting was being hungry. That's it. That's all they got out of it. What do you mean? Like, I fasted, and so, yeah, usually when you fast, you're supposed to get a certain degree of barakah within your heart and your life. You're supposed to get reward, Yawm al-Qiyamah, reward that is so vast that no one can actually accumulate or no one can actually calculate but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. Some people will fast, and all they get out of it is that on that day they were hungry for 17 hours. That's it. Nothing else. They will get nothing out of it. There are people who will qa'im, meaning they'll be praying. They're praying all night. All they got out of that night of praying is that they were tired at the end of it. Meaning they slept later. Instead of sleeping at 9, they slept at 11. That's it. But what about the hasanat? And nope, didn't get any of it. Are you understanding the problem? This is a very scary hadith, and there's a lot of them like that. They're very scary. They're very concerning. What do you mean? I fasted all day and I prayed all night, and all I got was hunger and fatigue and nothing else. Well, yeah, that's very, because there's a part here that we are neglecting. It's one thing to do the deed. It's another thing to have it accepted. They are not the same thing. We just prayed Isha. That was doing the deed. We performed the obligatory action. Now, how many of you can confirm that your Isha prayer was accepted? Raise your hand if you have confirmation that your Isha prayer was accepted. I don't have any hands up. Why? Because you don't know, and you never will, and neither can I. We cannot confirm that any of our good deeds were ever accepted. Acceptance is a different thing. We bring the a'mal, we bring all of these deeds Yawm al-Qiyamah. Ya Rabb, here's our prayer, here's our fasting, here's birr al-walidain, here's the sadaqah, here's our jihad, here's our focus on community service, here's this. Now, you have to wait. Will he accept it? Or will he say, no, I don't want any of it. Take it. Take it. It was filled with other things I don't want. Look at this. You didn't do this for me. You did this half for me. And at a moment you were thinking about God, and then in a second you were impressing some other person. I don't want that. Take that away. This one here, you did it, you were trying to get social status from someone. That's why you did it. This one here, you did it out of fear. This one you did out of, he's not finding. This one here was extremely vain. You were full of yourself as you were doing it. Here it was very arrogant. You were looking down at others as you did it. I don't want any of them. And that's a lifetime. What's left? If your deeds are thrown out, then what do you have? Yawm al-Qiyamah, you stand there, you have nothing. Because that's all you have. The only thing you're coming with is whatever a'mal. You come basically stripped of everything else. Yawm al-Qiyamah, we come naked. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clothes us for the purpose of us being able to be held accountable. But you come with nothing. You don't have your wallet, have your key, have your phone. You don't have anything. Whatever prefixes existed before your name, the DR and the PhD and the MD and the whatever other things that can exist there, all of them are being thrown away. It's just your name and the name of your father or your mother. That's it. And then whatever deeds you bring. If those deeds are thrown out and not accepted, that's it. It's over. There's nothing else to do. There's nothing left. And this is a big deal. Why would this happen? That's why. When there's lack of purity, when there's lack of purification of the nafs when you do these things, you end up having. So here's some nomenclature. Here's some words that we need to. These are the this is the terminology that we should all know when we talk about this subject over the next week or two. The spirit in Arabic, that's the ruh. All right. So this is helpful when you read the Quran. When you read the Quran, the ruh, that's the spirit. The soul, that's the nafs. And I'm going to explain to you what these are. Oh, sure. The consciousness, that's the fu'ad. In the Quran, the consciousness is the fu'ad. You're conscious of things. It kind of defines who you are. Like, what am I really? Am I this body? Now, subhanAllah, people can get into accidents and not much of their body can be left, but they'll still be the same person, right? They're still there. Sometimes they can lose all their senses. They can't see, they can't hear, but they're still that person. What is that then? If it's not the body, it's the consciousness, right? And that's in the Quran, it's referred to as the fu'ad. It's very important. Now, just as a disclaimer, if this is something that, because it's just one topic, meaning I only go maybe 2 or 3 lessons, but it's just one basic presentation. It won't take very long. If this is very interesting to you, then go back to, so was it not, it wasn't this Ramadan? It was the Ramadan before, or the one before, I can't remember. It's called The Empty Space. It was a seven episode series that I did. It's on Facebook. It's called The Empty Space. And I do 7 episodes. Each one's around maybe 40 minutes to an hour. And I actually break these things down in a lot of detail. So I'm not going to go through all that detail, or else this will take forever and we won't get, the mentorship program will turn into something very different. So I'm going to go through this quickly. But if you want all the details, if you want to really listen to this stuff and exactly how it works, then go back to that series and listen to it in detail. It's called The Empty Space. Inshallah, you'll find it beneficial. The subconscious, which is the heart, al-qalb. The subconscious is the qalb. And then you have the conscience, which is the dhamir, right? Basically your conscience. We all have a conscience. The Quran doesn't talk about this a lot. It calls it the nafs al-lawwama. That's the name that it gives it in Surah Al-Qiyamah. But it's not referred to as much. The nature of the soul and the convictions of the soul. There's a nature of the soul, meaning there are certain natures that the soul has. What is the soul? The soul was born when the spirit, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's breath, right? Nafkhatullah. What does that mean? No clue. All I know is that it's something that's coming purely from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is not a part of the world that we're living in, not a part of this world. So it's this ruh when it met the earth. This body that is just the minerals of the soil. Basically pick up soil, look at it, that's you, that's me. Once we die, we turn into that immediately, like almost within a couple of months. And it's very important that you go to cemeteries and you attend burials and you see what it means, because we go back into the womb of our mothers. We go back into the earth and we go back into the earth again, because that's where we came from. That's where this body came from. When the body met the spirit, the soul was born. This very unique creature that makes you and I a very interesting being. The malaika don't have that. The malaika are made from nur. The jinn made from nar. It's only one thing. So when they looked at the human being and they found flesh, when they found soil, and they found the ruh, the nafkha of Allah, the breath of Allah with the soil, and this mix came together and made something very interesting called the soul, they were wondering, what is this? And how is this going to work? How are they possibly going to function? Which makes us very unique and gives us this very specific story that we're living as human beings. There are natures of that soul. The soul does not understand delayed pleasure or delayed reward. Doesn't understand it. Like this nafs doesn't understand that. Why? Because that's how it's programmed. It's programmed it doesn't care about that. The nafs cares only about certain things. The convictions of the soul, very specific things. And again, each one of these is a full, basically within that series, it's a full lecture. So you can go back and kind of listen to them in detail if you care about it. The soul has certain convictions, certain things it believes in. It believes, it is what keeps you alive. What allows me to survive is the convictions of the soul. The soul wants you to get ahead, wants everything, doesn't want anything for anyone else, extremely selfish, very territorial. Why? Because it's trying to get you ahead. Its definitions, ahead means more possessions, more food, more control. That's what it understands. Everyone else should not be able to control it. Everyone should have less food than it, less possessions, less wealth. That's how it looks at everything. You want to understand how the soul works? Look at a 1-year-old. I have a 1-year-old. They're hilarious. Right? It's hilarious how they behave. Well, a 1-year-old, they're so much fun. 1-year-old, they want what they want and they want it now. And if they don't get it, they will scream until they get it right now. And they want it all. If you have 2 pieces of candy, they're taking both. If you have 5, they're taking all 5. Doesn't matter how many people are in the room, they're going to take them all and they'll scream. And it's really funny and nice when they're 1. It's not very funny when they're 10 or when they're 30. Not very funny anymore. That type of behavior is not really, it's frowned upon if you're 35 and you're still fighting over things and not sharing anything and you want it all for yourself and you're pushing people out of the line to get your food. It's not very fun anymore, right? But for children, it's acceptable. They're children. But that's the soul. You see that soul that's in that child? It's right inside of you. You just learned to put filters. We have just learned to put some filters and to maybe stop ourselves. That's not going to look good. I won't do that. But deep inside, that's what we want. These are the convictions of the soul and the nature of the soul. We'll talk about these things, inshallah, a little bit as we go along. So just know this, and we'll end with this, inshallah. We're not going to make it to the case today. We'll probably do it early next time. So the vicious and virtuous cycles. These cycles are very important. If you speak to psychiatrists, they'll talk about them as well. Psychiatrists use these things too. I verified that with a couple of them. But these are things that are Islamically very clear, and they talked about a lot. Thoughts, feelings, and actions. They all interchangeably affect each other. Each one affects the other two. So, if you have a negative thought, and you let it kind of just be, that negative thought will turn into a negative feeling. That will turn, you remember that? You were in remember grade 8? I taught you guys that when you were grade 8. Now I remember, I just remembered, I taught you guys in grade 8. Turn into a negative feeling. A negative feeling will turn into a negative action. That negative action will reinforce that negative thought, and then you just keep on going and going and going until you throw something in the middle of that cycle to stop it. Just like a positive thought will turn into a positive feeling, that will turn into a positive action, that will reinforce a positive thought. You can do it the other way around. Let's take a thought, an action. Any action. Any action, right? If it's a good action, it will reinforce a good thought, reinforce a good feeling. Start anywhere, go anywhere. It's either a vicious cycle or a virtuous cycle. It keeps on going. Here's the caveat that you should understand. Do you control your actions? Yes or no? Yes? Yes. Do you control your thoughts? It's a more of a breakdown, right? Do you control your feelings? No, you don't. Don't control your feelings. You can't control your feelings. Unless, hold on. Unless you understand this cycle, you do. But directly, if I don't like you, I don't like you. I don't like you. What am I going to do? All right, we're going to like him. Still don't like you. There you go. Don't give out the secrets of the maslahah yet. Yeah. Right? If you don't like someone, you don't like them. It's a feeling. It's just a feeling. You don't like them. I mean, it's not. They could have maybe done something to you. Sometimes they haven't done anything to you. You just, for some reason, this happens to me more often than it should. But I should learn from it, but I don't. So I've been doing public speaking for a while. I have a certain way of doing it. And I know that not everyone likes the way I do it. I honestly don't care anymore. I just do what I know how to do, what represents me, what actually is authentic to me, and I speak the way I see. But not everyone finds it, beneficial, which is fine. That's why there should be variety. There should be different khatibs, there should be different things. So you go to the person that you find captures your attention, and you enjoy the way that they talk about things. Because not everyone will enjoy how I do things. But I get more often than you imagine, people come up to me and say, I don't like you. Wallahi, just like that. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting experience in life when someone just walks up to you. You don't know this person, never met them before, have nothing. Just walk up to you and say, "Assalamu alaikum, I don't like you." طيب, barakallahu feek. Jazakallahu khairan. I'm going to try and like you. You made it very difficult for me right now, but sure. But I mean, it's normal for you not to like someone or like something. Now the question becomes: are you able to change that feeling? Are you able to change a feeling about not liking something or not liking someone, or being fearful, or being hesitant, or procrastinating, or whatever it is, whatever feeling you have inside, are you able to control it? Directly, you can't. There's no switch. You can't just change it. But what you can do is you can actually control these two things. If I don't like someone, and I continue to think about all of their negative features, we all have negative features. If I continue to think about negative things, they're mean, they're loud, they're disrespectful, they're this, then I'll reinforce that feeling. And then at some point I may do something to harm them, and I may enjoy it for a moment because it felt good, and that will reinforce the thought and reinforce the feeling, and it keeps on going. Or I recognize this feeling, that's not a healthy feeling. I shouldn't have that feeling. So I start changing my thoughts. And I start thinking, well, maybe there's a good reason for it. Maybe this person has struggles I don't understand. Maybe this person grew up had a difficult childhood, and they were having a really bad day, and I just rubbed them the wrong. And you start thinking about stuff. You start thinking about what maybe, and the more you kind of give them excuses, the more you're like, yeah, you stop disliking them as much. You start feeling actually a little bit empathetic towards them, a little bit of sympathy. And then maybe you actually follow the Quran, for example, and you say, "Idfa' billati hiya ahsan, fa idha alladhi baynaka wa baynahu adawatun ka'annahu waliyyun hamim." This verse is only for show, by the way, in the Quran. This is just to have there and talk about. "Idfa' billati hiya ahsan." Push back with the best of your behavior, and then suddenly, if you do so, that's what the ayah is saying. Suddenly, if you do so, the person that you have animosity with, the person who is your enemy, becomes your close friend. You change your thoughts. You change your actions, it affects your feelings, and then you understand how. So yes, you do have control over your feelings, just not directly. That has to be clear. That's why when anyone, and maybe this is not really the point of this lecture, we'll talk about this later. When someone comes and tells me they have an issue, when there's a sexuality problem, whatever feelings you have, it's your feelings. I can't blame you for your feelings. I can't tell you that you're wrong for having a feeling. You have a feeling. It's a feeling. The problem is, 1 and 2, these are what you're accountable for, and this is what actually you're going to be held for, your thoughts and your actions. You can't tell me, well, I have a feeling, which means I'm going to think this way and act that way. No, this here are your choices. This one here, I can totally empathize with you. I can empathize 100%, no problem. No problem, of course. Yeah, you have a test with a feeling you don't like, or you shouldn't have, but you have ways to deal with it. These virtuous and vicious cycles. So I'll end with this. This is the information I want to leave you with for a while. Think about this, let this kind of settle in. This lecture specifically, this topic, is different from the ones we've done before. A little bit different because of the way that I need you to think about. We will start next time. I'll go through a few more key concepts, and then we'll have a case or two, and we'll go through a few cases, and I'll give you some time to kind of think about these things, and we'll talk about maybe what diseases of the heart and what acts of worship of the heart we can focus on. Again, I'm not going to fix all these problems for you within this lecture or within the next couple of lectures. There's going to be a path, either you choose to walk or you don't. I'm just basically the guy with the, in front of the plane with the thing. I'm just pointing you have to walk here. It's up to you whether you do it or whether you don't. So we'll end with that, inshallah. Do we stick, time-wise? Yeah. So we do. I didn't realize that the number of youth mentorship people were going to be as high as they were. Like I didn't see it. Mashallah, we had. It was just the message was full. I thought we would have a much smaller number, that we could basically have an easy transition. So the numbers for Monday, Isha is going to be high. So technically, we can go back to Tuesday after Maghrib, because Sheikh Ma'an has already removed all of his halaqat until after Isha. So we'd be going back to Tuesday at 7, basically. Would that work? Put your hand up if Tuesday after Maghrib would work. Again, all right, so the majority said it's okay. All right. No, Maghrib. From Maghrib to Isha. So we go from Maghrib until Adhan Isha, then we leave instead of being, So Maghrib before now, we don't have a lot of time. So Maghrib now is 7. Or it's going to be less, it'll be before 7 next week. So basically, if I start 6:30, which is when we were starting, that's not going to work. I have to start 6. I don't make it from work on time. So we can just start 7, which is at Maghrib time. So we can go from Maghrib to Isha. Probably better than after Isha, because now it's 9:34 and you have school in the morning. I have work in the morning as well. And basically, I think it was a struggle to get in. I think there was too many cars and too many people and a lot of kids, so it was a bit of a mess. So let's do that. Not tomorrow, obviously, but we move it next week back to Tuesday after Salat al-Maghrib. We'll put it in the WhatsApp group so you can take a look at it, inshallah, and just Yeah, please link the empty space. This is, for this topic specifically, if you want to read and listen to more, the empty space I break off. This is basically this presentation is the summary of those 7 lectures. I just summarized them into one presentation for you to listen to. But if you want the details and you actually want to listen to stuff and take time to comprehend some of these issues, then that's a good thing to refer to. That's what we'll do, inshallah, starting next week, bidhnillah ta'ala. Subhanallah, bihamdik, shanu la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullahu khairan wa barakallahu feekum.